And 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Welcome back to the TMCJ podcast. We are on episode 86. And Blue's back.
I'm back.
With that one awkward episode where it was just me talking to myself for a half hour. And now he has returned.
Badder than ever. And oh god, I listened to that podcast. I was like, there's so many things I want to argue with Kaiser about on this. But
did you actually listen to it?
Yeah. Of course I did. And yep, I thought he was an ignorant. No, I can't say that word. That was good. If there's one man out there that can talk to himself for half an hour straight, it's your man Kaiser.
That's right. Somehow I was able to do it. But yeah, so this week we've got a few topics. Blue is going to be carrying us through the topics section because it's been quite a while. I'm sure I can think of things that have happened during the week. But so can you. But for segment 3, we're finally going to be talking about that book that Blue had been trying to get me to read for quite a while, which I went through the audiobook for, Blind Faith by Ben Elton. So we'll be discussing that in segment 3. But without further ado, Blue, you have a topic?
Okay, I'll give you choices, alright? Yeah, 3 topics.
Yep.
One is mythology. Another is mobiles. And a third is monsters. I tried really hard to make them all M's, but it worked.
Okay. Is the answer to every single one of them Raid Shadow Legends?
They're all different. And none of them are Raid Shadow Legends.
Okay. Let's go with mythology.
Mythology. Okay, so this week I have been inundated with media regarding mythology. Completely happenstance, but it's great. I love it. So, me and Alicia have started watching a Netflix series called Blood of Zeus.
Oh, I've heard of this.
It's an anime, and because we've almost finished Cowboy Bebop, and we have finished The House Husband, and we've seen 2 episodes of it now, and I love it. It's made by the same people that made Castlevania.
And you did like the animation style, especially in that one.
Yeah, and right from the get-go, you see they still don't hold any bars with brutally chopping people up. As there are demons running across the land, and they have been kind of left there by the gods so that man can have something to battle against, kind of thing, something to strive to be better at.
Has Zeus turned into a swan to bang people yet?
An eagle. He went full American. But you find out about that in episode 2. So, in the first episode, you're introduced to the main character, a dashing young man who's very strong and, compared to everyone else, can actually throw and punch demons around. Even
Hercules?
Though he's he's called Heron.
Okay.
And I know little bits of Greek mythology, but I'm not the best. Ironically, Alicia knows more about this kind of shit than I do, apparently, because I'm terrible with names. So he is a poor kid with his poor mother, and then you find out in the second episode, they help. They're good people. They help out this old man that fell over and hurt his leg. Then the demon hunting party comes through the town. They're like, "Have you seen anything?" And they're like, "No." He goes over to get some water and sees a lady lying in the water source, apparently asleep. He walks over, picks her head up out of the water, and finds out that her guts are just spilt everywhere. Which, I mean, that must be very opaque water. Is that the right word? Yeah.
Yeah, if you're trying to say it's hard to see through it, then opaque is the right word.
And then he gets attacked by a demon, and they fight and all that. Yeah. So, episode 2, find out that his mother used to be the queen to a tyrant king, and Zeus would come along change his form to look like the Tyrant King, be really nice to her, and then fuck her.
That is
repeatedly.
Like talking about Greek mythology. That's basically Zeus's MO. Like he just transforms into random shit and like bangs people.
Yeah, and then she gets pregnant, of course. And she's pregnant with twins. One of them has brown eyes, which is the same as the Tyrant King, and then one has blue eyes. The Tyrant King, not the dragon. The king tries to kill the child with the same eyes as Zeus. And then an eagle flies through the window and kicks the king in the face. Then the Tyrant King tries to throw the baby off a cliff, and the mother stabs him and runs over the child. In the meantime, the brown-eyed child is taken away by the palace guards and is meant to be raised safely, but then gets like shanked by his uncle.
There's a remarkable amount of this in the ancient world.
Oh yeah, but while they were banging, Zeus's wife, Hera,
yep.
Yeah.
Which, by the way, little side note, a lot of the horrible things that happen to demigods, it's usually Hera getting jealous that her wife is out there banging people. Like Hercules.
Her husband.
Yeah, Hercules. The whole thing with Hercules was he was the story is the 12 trials of Hercules, and they were basically things that Hera put in his way to try and either kill him or prevent him from achieving any sort of like station or glory, because she was pissed that her husband had turned into something and gone off to bang some random harlot on the earth.
And so she was looking down from the heavens and saw that the main character's mother's room was like glowing with light, and one of Zeus's other sons, I can't remember his name. Can you remember some Zeus son names?
I mean, was he a god or demigod?
Yeah.
I'm sorry.
I mean, he was a god, I think.
Yeah.
But I think he was also a bastard. I don't know.
Yeah. Just keep going. I might remember.
Anyway, so he goes over to Zeus and he's like, "Mum's pissed. Well, not my mum, but your wife. I'm gonna stand in this room instead. You go pretend to be in the sea, then teleport back to her with like some seaweed on you, and you'd be like." So that's what happens. And then, like, immediately the next scene is Zeus back in the room with the woman. And then this time Hera's just turned into a bird and is looking through a window and is like, "Alright, this bitch.
I love it. Like this is true in all of Greek mythology too. Like Hera never takes it out on Zeus. She always takes it out on the bastard children and the women that he sleeps with.
So she goes to these dream goblins.
Okay, yeah.
And makes the Tyrant King have a premonition that he's going to have twins and one of them won't be his. And that's how that leads to that. It turns out the old man in the real time that they've been helping out has been Zeus in disguise. And he gets his son to climb a really big hill and find some adamantite, which he forges a sword out of for him. I think that's what I'm up to at the end of episode 2, really.
It's interesting. It's a very...
the villagers try and burn the main character's mum because they think she might be a demon, and then she ends up like stabbing herself with it, and he gets beaten. Anyway. Yeah,
this, so far from what I'm hearing, it doesn't sound like they're actually going with a real like mythological story. It sounds like they're taking inspiration from Greek mythology and kind of writing an anime out of it, which sounds kind of cool, actually. I'd watch that. I think I may actually watch it, because I've been looking for something to watch.
Especially because the studio is a good one.
Yeah.
And yeah, the other mythology thing, I started listening to Mythos by Stephen Fry.
I've actually been listening to since I finished Blind Faith, I wanted to listen to another audiobook. What I've been listening to is Celtic Mythology by whoever wrote this book.
Okay.
Philip Freeman. Philip Freeman, sorry.
Philip
Celtic
Freeman.
Mythology by
Okay.
Philip Freeman. Tales of gods, goddesses, and heroes. And it's interesting because a lot of Celtic mythology, like it never got written down. It was all oral tradition passed down through druids and things like that. And then when Christianity
Those kinky druids.
then when Christianity spread through, it kind of, stamped over it. So in a lot of cases, you're getting like it's like an interpretation of a story from thousands of years ago. So a lot of stuff
Yeah.
has been lost, like a lot of the names of the gods and stuff like that. So most of what they have is like heroic stories, and almost all of them go like this. This guy was super strong and super cool. He, this guy pissed him off, so he cut off his head. Or he's like, it's all like, think like the most like hyper masculine, hyper violent mythology. That's
Yeah.
this.
Well,
All the heroes.
the-
Sorry, go on.
sorry, the Mythos book that I listened to by Stephen Fry, it's like, I think it's meant to be quite close to the original tales, but then it's kind of got slightly comedic twists put to certain things, like things that the gods wouldn't actually say, but it's
Is this
kind of like,
still Greek mythology or?
yes,
Okay.
wait, Gaia,
That's Greek.
Uranus, yeah.
Yep, that's all still Greek.
So, yeah, I'm finding out, like, okay, so, Gaia birthed Uranus, and then they fucked,
Yeah, and then like doesn't
and then all the kids fucked each other, and then all their kids fucked each other.
well, the thing is, I think like most of the life in the ocean comes because Uranus like wouldn't stop banging Gaia, and so they conspired to rip his testicles apart.
So, what happens is that Gaia went through all of her children, and they were like, nah, we're not going to kill Dad, he's going to fucking murder us. And then they come to, is it Corn? Not Corn. Kratos? No.
No, you're Kronos.
Kronos, thank you.
Yeah.
And he's like a massive fucking emo, apparently. And he hates Dad, and he's like... And Guy gives him a special sickle made out of adamantite again. They like their adamantite weapons.
Yep.
And Guy is like, okay, while your father is banging the shit out of me, you need to come up and kill him. And he's like, oh, I don't need to hear all these details. And so it's all happening, and he comes out and he's like, ah! And he cuts his
Balls off.
wing
Yeah.
wong off. Yeah. And then throws them like across a country and into the sea.
Yeah, and that spawns the the life in the ocean. I think is the original story. The ironic thing is that Kronos does all this, right? There's a lot of there's a serious like undercurrent of fratricide that goes throughout like the Greek creation myths, because they do all that to Kronos does that to his dad, but then Kronos gives birth to the Olympian gods.
Well, that when Kronos kills Uranus, Uranus is like, I curse you that your kids will do exactly the same thing to you that you just done to me.
Yeah, and that's why for I think all of his children he eats. Yeah, the
Eats
moment they're born.
4 or 5 of them,
Yeah, until
And
you get to
then-
Zeus.
and then his sister, who he's been banging, goes to her parents, Gaia and Uranus, and is like, he's a bit of a dick.
That's yeah, you're right. That is a bit of a twist. That's not the original story. Has her just instead of giving him Zeus to eat, she gives him a rock wrapped in like baby swaddling clothes.
I think that's where it's going, but I haven't got to that point yet.
Okay, well, I not to spoil anything.
I know that there's going to be a switcheroo, but I didn't know it was
Yeah.
a rock.
I think in the original story it's a rock. I don't know if it changes in this, but and that's Zeus. Zeus gets away, and then spoiler alert, he kills Kronos.
Yes.
Yeah. But
I
then, yeah,
think all the kids then come out of his stomach. But I know that
They
from
do.
other mythology, not from
yeah, and those ones that he's eaten so far are the other Olympian gods, like Poseidon and Hephaestus, and Dionysus.
yeah, I think that's the one. Yeah, no, it's going good. one other book that I just want to quickly talk about very quickly, because I read through it very fast. Have you ever heard of The Adventures of Sharp?
Mm-mm.
Probably not. Okay. He's like a British legionary soldier. He's a fictional British legionary soldier who went out to like Afghanistan, that kind of stuff, and did all these crazy adventures. And he's like a hero, and he's very brave and that kind of thing. The book I've been reading is called Flashman. So imagine the same kind of thing. He's sent off to a foreign Afghanistan, and he's part of the British Army doing his job. Except he is an absolute arsehole. Like the worst person you can imagine. He lies, cheats, embezzles, all this shit, and he gets away with it because he's good at being an arsehole. And so he's getting promoted through the ranks. There's a point where like he's getting chased by like 5 bandits because he did the no fun times with a woman, and they're all like, "We're gonna fucking kill you now because she's our wife," or whatever. And no, one of their leaders.
I got you. Just an interesting phrasing. Yeah.
And he's there with, he's a lancer, and he's there with one of his aides, and the aide is like kills 4 of the bandits, then goes down to the last guy while killing the last bandit, kind of thing. And so he comes along, he's just like, to make sure he kills the last bandit's like gasping on the floor, he just sticks his lance in. As the rest of the cavalry come around the corner and are like, oh my god, he's killed 5 people on his own, basically. Let's give him a whole bunch of shit, like great things, and an armed escort, and send him back to his people. So it's kind of events like that. It's like an unfortunate series of events, but the exact opposite.
Where he just stumbles dick first into success.
Exactly. Like, he's an absolute coward. He runs away very quickly. But then he's the last one surviving quite often. So they're like, oh my god, you got to have that amazing fight on your own. And like, there are bodies, so many bodies of enemies. And yeah.
That's actually that's very interesting, because I feel like I've seen other stories with plot lines like that, or at least characters that share a similar vein, where they just they're not trying to succeed, but through these series of events, they end up being put into positions of prominence.
Well, he is trying to get all this stuff.
Yeah.
He's just, yeah.
The actions aren't directly related.
Yeah, he's got like a wife who he was forced into marrying because he fucked her, and then their family were like, "You're gonna marry her now, or we're gonna kill you." So he's like, "Guess I'm married."
God.
But yeah, it's definitely not PG. There's a lot of fucky fucks and Victorian names for people not of British origin. How
old is this book?
Watch it. I don't know how old it is. It's called Flashman, like I said. It's... I mean, he specifically... He wrote it... The author wrote it as if he got, like, the papers of this Flashman, had written down papers of his adventures. So the author's kind of written back as if it was in Victorian writing.
Yeah, and as if it was like like actual events that he's just documenting from a historical perspective.
I don't think it's super old, but I don't think it's not new.
Gotcha. I kind of want to look it up because it actually sounds pretty entertaining.
It's good. But anyway, sorry, I've been blabbing for a long time about books. Do you have anything that you want to talk about, or shall I move on to another topic?
I mean, kind of on the same subject of mythology, just a game that I've been playing a bit recently. The game's called North. What?
Oh, okay.
The game's called the game's called Northgard. It's a game I've had on my wish list for a while, and it was on sale on Steam for like $7 this week, so I picked it up. It's interesting. It's an RTS, and
I've played it for 5 hours.
Yeah, I think I've played it for 10 hours in the last like day or two. Right. It really sucked me in. Once I figured a couple things out. So it's based on like Norse mythology, and like loosely based on Norse mythology. So you have like, it's not meant to be like historically accurate, but you're some Viking clan that gets betrayed, and that's the story mode. The gameplay wise, though, it's interesting because a lot of it's automated, like the resource gathering and stuff like that. You can only ever create one villager at a time, and that's automatic based on your village's like population cap and happiness. I found out way too late that happiness was how you got villagers faster. So I'm like, why is everyone else expanding so much faster than me? Like, because I was just giving my people
winter and everyone dies.
No, I was good on resources, but my happiness, I kept it marginal because I was like, just enough happiness to make the number green, and I'm good. Not realizing that I could get villagers a lot faster if I made them really happy. And at that point, beer halls everywhere. My people were like crazy happy. They were pumping out villagers left and right.
Crazy drunk.
It's Vikings, so there's no downside.
Yeah. No, it reminded me a lot of Black and White from back in the day, the way you kind of slowly push over the land and invade enemies.
Yeah, it has that same kind of cartoony like art style to it too. Like not super cartoony, but just like everyone's just a little bit too short and squat, and they have I can't remember what
Kaisers, you might say.
Yeah, exactly. They share my build. Except with, braided beards.
Which you wish.
Yeah. I can, but
I mean, you almost can, yeah.
Yeah. It's just I can't make a very good braid.
Yeah.
Yeah, so it's been a lot of fun. I've been playing through. I don't know how. I mean, certainly I picked it up for $7. It's definitely worth that at this price.
Yeah.
But one thing I've realized playing through this and playing through a lot of RTS games recently is that StarCraft has basically ruined RTS for me. Like, ruined me for RTS, I should say. Because every other RTS game I play feels glacially slow.
I'd say that's the reason I only spent 5 hours on it, was because it did feel a bit too slow for me. Because when something's happening, it lasts around a minute, and then you've got, like, it's exciting minute, but then you have a long time before you move to the next puzzle piece, as it were, on the map.
Yeah, and I prefer to be able to, like, with RTS games, I like them to move quickly. So yeah, StarCraft especially, you've got tons of stuff happening like every moment of the game. You're constantly having things to do.
Also, I don't think you could directly control your units on the tiles, could you?
You can directly control some
from within the tile.
Yeah, so you can directly control your military units. And your villagers, you can move them from tile to tile and, like, assign them to different tasks within the tile. But then they also just kind of do things on their own if you don't give them instructions.
Right.
Yeah, but it's a pretty entertaining game.
But yeah, definitely worth $7. I always think, first of all, how much is the average bottle or drink of your choice? And then how many hours worth of enjoyment do you get, and then compare it to a game for the cost. That's kind of my scheme of, is a game worth the money? Is how many drinks would it take to get through?
I try to compare it to, like, other, like, kind of experience things. So, like, the other things I could spend money on to entertain myself, like going out, to see a movie, going out with friends, going to some other event. Compared to this, but yeah, it's the same sort of concept. Already, I think the game is paid for it. $7 for so far 10 hours of entertainment. Call that a win.
Yeah.
Full price, it's $30. I don't think I'd pay that.
And maybe this was just me finding a way to live with myself making such purchase. But back when I had CS:GO knives, and I was like, okay, it's £70, but for a start, I can resell it, which I actually have now. And second of all, it's like £70. That's like one pretty strong night of drinking, and I've got this for a very long time, and I don't wake up with a hangover. Maybe it kind of tipped me for buying it.
Knives, they don't give you a hangover.
Exactly, they just make me angry at Russians. But yeah, so that's my model. to put himself.
That makes sense.
Yeah.
Oh, okay. Yeah, what
So another
else?
topic? Okay. Monsters or mobiles?
Let's go with mobiles, because I have something to talk about here, too.
Okay, mobiles. The new World of Warcraft mobile game. Can you believe it?
I can't believe Blizzard didn't, like, learn their lesson. What, don't you guys have phones? Remember
Right?
that?
There's been so many memes about it. And what's even better is that in the opening cinematic to announce it, the first thing so it's like a person in a tavern,
Yeah.
right? They walk over to this like kind of pinball-esque machine, right? First thing they do is put money into the slot. It's like, really, Warcraft? Really?
Start as you mean to go on.
We all know there's going to be loot boxes and shit like that, but putting it in the intro cinematic first, before you see gameplay, that's funny.
Yeah. God, Blizzard is just... They're a shell of their former selves. Like,
Yeah.
they were already going down, like, a pretty bad road, and then they get hit with all the controversy of, you know, the online activists and stuff like that. And then now, like, they had tons of people leaving. So what talent they did have left, and now because they were the source of controversy, they've now got, like, I remember reading this. This is something I read in the past few weeks.
Yeah.
One of the people from Blizzard's, like, HR department now has full creative control to veto any stories in games.
Really?
Like, I can't think of a way to have a more boring story than to have someone from HR have the ability to say, you can't write that story.
Well, I know we haven't actually talked about it on the podcast because it's been during the 2 weeks, but the video game donkey video where he was like, the new Overwatch, and what have they changed? McCree is now called Steve, or something like that. It's like,
Yeah. God,
and we all know. Okay, if you don't know why McCree's name has been changed, it's because there were allegations against the person that McCree was named after, and so that by changing McCree's name in game, they think that they've like swept it all away.
who gives a shit? Like,
Yeah.
but yes, I did see that video, and like they basically. I loved how he ended the video too. He's like, "What have they been doing for the past 2 years? Like, it better just all be
exactly
the TV."
Genuinely, while I was watching it, I messaged Kaiser and I said, I'm not sure if this is a video game donkey joke or not, but I think this is Overwatch 1 that he's showing me. Like, I can't see any difference.
Overwatch 1 was like, you know, it was a 6v6, like, class-based shooter, you know, very arcadey, cartoony, over-the-top, goofy kind of action. Fun game. Well, I haven't really... It kind of got a lot worse in more recent times, but for the first few years it was out, I remember playing it quite a bit and really enjoying it. Yeah, they announced they were making Overwatch 2, so like, oh, you know, what's going to be changing? You assume new gameplay, new characters, new graphics.
Now with one less player in each game. It's like,
yeah, they changed it from 6v6 to 5v5, changed the name of a couple characters, and did a mild rework of a few others. And the graphics are like near identical to the point, like Blue said, watching
well, the
gameplay
map's
footage.
the same. It's the same maps, just in different times of the day. It's like, seriously? That's milking pretty bad.
Dude, what did we do? We added a 2 on the end of it. That's it. Yeah, so that's yeah, but again, it reinforces my point. Like, Blizzard is just going downhill.
The mobile game, though. Alright. One particularly good thing and one particularly bad thing. I'm going to start with the bad thing, so we end up with a good thing. And people might not even think this is a bad thing. I do. In the video, they showed, like, let's say Garrosh, for example. In fact, they used the other, more wussy version of Garrosh, but whatever. So, like an orc, right? In, like, a plasticine kind of model kind of thing. Like a plastic action figure. And then he kind of, like, comes to life and is fighting, right? And the first thing I thought was, oh shit, this is the same as what Disney did. And those things cost so much money.
Oh, you're talking about the little figures that you like stick on a thing.
Yes, it looked exactly like that. And if they're going to do that, I don't think anyone is going to buy it.
Nintendo did it too with the amiibos.
Yes, and they suck. They take up lots of room, they're incredibly expensive, and they don't actually give you that much in game.
You know what the stupid thing is? I have a Switch Pro controller, so I can play Switch. My Switch is on in the background right now, so I can play things from my couch with an actual controller. For some reason, I couldn't figure this out. Like the official Nintendo one was like $70 or $80. But if you bought like a third party one, by like a quality third party one, it was only like $40 or $50. And normally there's like a $10 price difference. Like if I'm talking about like an Xbox controller, if I buy the third party one, they're nearly the same price. Maybe it's like $10 cheaper. This one was, it was like $30 cheaper. And I'm like, what is the difference? And you know what it is? The Pro controller has one of those stupid amiibo sensors built into it. That's the only reason. Because it has this stupid and I didn't know this until after I'd already bought the controller. Because they built that stupid sensor in that I'm never going to use, it's $30 more expensive.
Yep. And, I mean, okay, we talk about Nintendo, but Warcraft is bad for their microtransactions and other shitty deals, but Nintendo... We're really shitting on the game companies this time. Alright, Nintendo. I've been on the Nintendo store a lot recently because I've been without my PC and I've been nearby a Switch. And I was like, on the Nintendo store, I was like, oh, fuck, yes. Mario Strikers Charged is being added to the Wii. Like a remastered, better version, right? I click on it and I'm like, ooh, what's the new stuff? There is nothing new that I saw on the entire page. Nothing new since the Wii version, which it originally came out on, which has been quite a few years now. And it's got that Nintendo price tag guarantee that it will be £50 because all Nintendo games are £50.
They never decrease in price. Yeah, if you
Whether
see
it's Mario Odyssey, an amazing fucking game, or Luigi Likes to Play Golf 3.
Yeah.
£50.
There's only one Switch game that I've ever gotten that was on like a heavy discount, and that was Sid Meier's Civilization 5 or 6. That one I got for like, it was on Amazon.
That's not a Nintendo game though.
It was on the Switch though. You're right.
So no,
you're talking about
Switch
official Nintendo IP.
Yeah.
Yeah. In that case, 100%. They never go on sale.
Yeah, no, I got the Civ one as well. There's some really good games on the Switch, but there's also a fuck ton of shit ones. And a lot of the good ones are Nintendo's, so way too expensive. What I want on the Switch, more than anything, is Netflix.
I could see that. I kind of appreciate, though, that they've taken the stance that they're just like... The other consoles are trying to be like everything, like all in one, like Xbox, PlayStation. You can get Netflix and Amazon. You can go on the internet and do all this stuff, and you can play games. I kind of appreciate the fact that Nintendo's just like, fuck it, we just do games. That's it.
Well, no, they did it for the Wii. In fact, I think they even had Netflix on the Wii.
They did. They also had... One of the things I really liked in the Wii was they had a news thing. It was an app, and it just had it came up and it was just a picture of the globe, and you could click on a random country and it'd be like, hey, here's a random news story from it. I actually used to really like
China, everything is perfect. As it always is.
No, fuck that. Nintendo's a Japanese company. They don't give a shit about China. Yeah.
Yeah, no, it's just annoying because it's like the one console we have plugged in over there, so I can't...
That you can't watch it.
Yeah.
But yes, speaking of mobile, just one last thing before we wrap this up and move on to the book review. So I told you about this, but I want to talk about it a little bit on the podcast. I have a flip phone, and they're phasing out the 3G networks, and so I have to get rid of it. And so I finally have to... My personal phone is going to be back to being a smartphone again. And I got that Samsung Galaxy Z flip phone thing that's like the folding smartphone.
Yep.
It's got the screen that folds in half. That seemed like magic to me because I feel like it looks like it's gonna break.
It's a gimmick. It's a fucking gimmick.
Yeah, I'm okay with a gimmick. I haven't had a new phone in a while, but yeah. So I got that. We'll see how it actually works out. This is something but this is why I bring it up. My choices were, and I understand the way that like mobile networks and like the companies and stuff chart their pricing plans are actually a lot better in Europe. Like for getting a mobile phone, in the U.S. they're borderline predatory. Like I could get this phone from my carrier, which is Verizon, and it would be I get two options. I could get the phone, the 128 gigabyte version of the phone, for 36 payments of $27.77, right?
Yeah.
Or just pay $1,000, right? That's to upgrade the phone line. Of course, if I had a smartphone and traded it in, they give you some other deal, but that's just so that they can like basically keep you switching your phone out and never actually owning it. If I went to Samsung's actual website, I could get the 256 gig version of the phone, so double the size, and it came with their like little wireless earbuds that are like $150 for free, along with a $50
bucks earbuds.
Yeah,
Jesus.
they're probably overpriced, but still they're like really high quality like wireless earbuds. Think like AirPods, but Samsung.
Right.
Anyway, and a $50 gift card to Google Play Store for $50 cheaper than it was at Verizon. So $950, you get the free headphones, you get the $50 gift card, and you get the phone that's got twice the memory. Yeah. And it's the unlocked version, so I could use it with any carrier. So and it was still $50. I just when I saw that,
buying phones stresses me the fuck out. I don't want any of those special plans. I just want to buy a phone.
Yeah. Well, that's the thing. That was why I was glad that I decided to check Samsung's website, because I was able to just buy the phone, and it was cheaper, the better version of the phone, and it came with a bunch of free shit.
Nice.
That's it.
I mean, the last time I upgraded my phone wasn't because it broke. It was just because it was so old, because I'd looked after it so well that the App Store and stuff no longer ran on it, and that kind of makes iPhones a bit obsolete.
I mean, that is exactly
still make calls, but that's about it.
That's exactly why I'm changing out my phone now, because it literally will not function on the wireless network anymore. They've
got those fucking predefined death dates for your phone when they sell it to you.
Well, not this one. This one they're just taking down the antennas because they're all on 5G now. This one still works on 3G.
Yeah, I hope they don't do that in my country because I still use 3G.
Yeah, I don't know how they changed that in the US compared to Europe. Anyway.
Right, have we got time for another topic, or are we going on to segment 3?
We're already at about 40 minutes. Let's end us off there. We can get on to the book review.
Gotcha.
All right. This is going to be the end of segment 1 of the TMCJ podcast. Thank you all for listening, and you will hear us again momentarily for segment 3. Welcome back to the TMCJ podcast. We are on segment 3, our wildcard segment, and we're back to another book review this week. In particular, one that has been a long time coming, at least, one that Blue has been pushing me to read for quite a long time. He's described it as one of his favorite works of dystopian fiction. So it is Blind Faith by Ben Elton, is it?
Ben Elton.
Yep. Ben Elton. Thank you. Do you want to...
He writes some very fucked up books. If you don't know Ben Elton books, this is one of his more fucked up ones, I guess. Because it just makes you feel uncomfortable, as we'll get into. But there were also... Go on.
There were points where I literally had to take... I was listening to it on an audiobook. And part of it, I think, was the performance of the person doing the reading. But there were points where I had to stop reading for a while. I had to stop listening because it was making my skin crawl.
There's another really good one called... It's Something Idol. It's based off Pop Idol and how... It makes you... whether any of it is, like, relatable to real life or not. I don't know, because I'm not in that industry.
Mm.
But it's super not PG. It's really bad. You would find it very funny. But also a little bit fucked up.
Yeah.
No, I've been reading a lot of dystopian novels recently, and obviously started with the one that you recommended.
Oh yeah, Brave New World, right?
Brave New World.
Yeah.
And then I've read 1986.
84.
1984. Clearly it left a good impression. Which they actually reference in this book.
They do, and actually one of the first things I wrote, because it's obviously been a while since I finished the book, because we took a little bit of a hiatus from recording these while your computer was getting some TLC. But one of the first things I wrote in my notes, because I wanted to get this down right after I finished it, was at first seemed like a combination of Idiocracy, 1984, and a televangelist, or in televangelism.
Yeah.
Are you familiar with the movie Idiocracy?
No.
It's it's an American comedy movie, and the idea is as part of some government experiment, this random average soldier dude and a hooker get frozen in a medical experiment to see if cryogenic sleep works. But due to government incompetence, it just they don't get woken up ever. And so 50 years or 100 and something years later, they wake up, but people have basically just gotten stupider and stupider to the point where the average IQ is 40 or something like that. And it's just the whole world is covered in trash. The president is a pro wrestler. And all just... But it's meant to be a comedy of just, but it was also a little bit disturbing because when you see it and it's just people getting more and more moronic, and so I saw
pretty good, to be honest.
It's a pretty funny movie. I'd highly recommend it. But this book, in a lot of ways, I saw pieces of that, and then of course pieces of 1984, and then of course the televangelist stuff was kind of obvious because they're the people, the preachers you see on TV, the Lord is coming down, and
yeah.
Anyway, sorry.
It's the Lord and the love.
The Lord and the love.
And oh boy, there's a lot of love to go around.
I did have to look up when this book was written because how they the groups that they predicted would become the oppressors in this future world and some of the disasters, it's definitely very dated in terms of because I could tell, I was I bet this was written in the early 2000s or mid 2000s. Because that was the period of time where people were thinking that the oppressors of the future were going to be these hardcore
church?
Religious groups, yeah.
And
that's kind of obviously that didn't happen. We've passed on that. Religion is less influential now than it pretty much has ever been.
At least not in our countries.
Yeah, at least not in English speaking Western countries. The hardcore evangelical Christians really didn't end up growing in popularity or power.
No. But yeah, do you want to do the walkthrough?
Yeah, and I think that I might actually be able to. So I've forgotten what's the main character's name. Is it Winston? Or is it what is his name? Because I'm gonna. Oh crap! I coughed.
You babble.
Okay, so basically the premise is this book is set something 100 or so years in the future, so the year 2100 and something, and the sea levels have risen, the world's become hot. Basically, the whole runaway.
I typed "blind faith" main character into Google, and it came up with "blind faith." The main character is Irene, who recently divorced to her husband Greg. I was like, wait, what?
One thing I found out.
Blind faith.
One thing I found out looking this book up was there are quite a few books out there called Blind Faith.
Trafford,
thank you. Ironically, I remember his wife's name better than his. Her name was Shantoria.
Yeah.
Anyway, so this guy Trafford, it's sort of like a pseudo 1984 state, but with an eye towards social media and online culture. So basically, there's a lot of things this cultural things that I think this book gets very right in terms of like looking at what they could evolve into and how bad they could get. Anyway, Trafford, he is this British guy who lives, and works for like a government agency. There's this whole spiel at the beginning where he's talking about doing some world building as he's going through his commute, and how it's like crazy hot. And
the very, very first thing is when he's still in his apartment and the telescreen.
Yeah, it's established that in the style of 1984, which, like you said, they reference, there's these always online screens everywhere, but it's much more social media-esque, where everyone is always doing a video blog, or everyone is always live streaming, or always getting ads and stuff. Yeah, it's Big Brother if Big Brother was automated by an algorithm and a bunch of fat, sweaty people with issues and narcissism.
Who is your landlord and can see everything that you do.
Yeah, that's the other thing. I think the Barbie Hart, I think, is the woman's name.
Yeah.
She's like become so enormously fat she can't leave her apartment, and
I mean, there's some people anyway.
But yeah,
it draws parallels in some time to.
I did think that there was a lot of predictions there where this book, like, it definitely predicted the whole body positivity movement. The whole healthy at any size thing, which anyone who has studied any marginal amount of medicine knows that that's ridiculous. And
by that we mean on both ends of the spectrum.
Yeah.
Or at least I do. Yeah, okay, we both do. That people should not be a certain skinniness.
Yeah,
that is unhealthy.
Anorexia, bulimia, that's very unhealthy. Obesity, that's unhealthy. But
anyway, yes, that was disclaimer aside.
Yeah, there are people who will claim that they can be perfectly healthy, with those conditions. No, not in general. No. Anyway, so she can't leave her apartment, so all she does is watch other people's live streams and peek in on them and be the town gossip or the tenement gossip, because they're all in one big tenement building, which is their community, community in like the Facebook sense of it too, where they have like community live streams, and there's a definite pecking order among the the people in the building, and
popularity.
Yep. So he also talks about how like I think one of the many annoying like shortened phrases that they have in this book.
Oh, I didn't mind this. I didn't mind this short phrase. If it's the one I think
the physical office one.
Yeah, physicoffs.
Yeah, they call them physicoffs. And because they were just talking about diseases like a second before in the book, when I heard that at first, I thought like fizzy cough, like he has a fizzy cough today, like he has like a phlegm in his throat or something like that, and he's sick. No, physical office. So also it predicted the whole working remotely thing, because that's something that's come about more recently.
Although it's for different reasons, to be fair.
Yeah, it's mainly because what was it? Was it because of space reasons, or was it because just the internet was so prevalent that they could do it this way? Or
so there was because everyone could communicate with everyone via telescreens, but in order to basically have people actually having other human contact, and then by extension having relationships and things, they had to go into the office a certain number of days. Yeah,
that was the other thing. Oh yeah, because the one of the main, it's hard to really call it an antagonist, but kind of one of the main driving, I guess, bad organizations in the story is this religious order called the Temple, which is basically like if you combined like evangelical preachers, and specifically the ones you see on TV, who are basically just there to get cash, and then combine them with like, I don't know, the Catholic Inquisition from like medieval times, mixed them together, and also
not just really any kind of Inquisition, really.
Well, yeah, but the thing is, they're also insanely perverse. I think there's a line I wrote down in here because I was trying to think of the best way to describe how. Here it is. The best way to describe the world in a very pithy sentence, and this is what I came up with. This is a world where religion has become a perversion and science has become a religion. And we'll get into that with the plot, why I think that works, because I'll talk about the temple a little bit too, but basically the whole thing is they need to keep having kids, and one of the reasons they need to keep having kids is because because everything has become like subtropical in the Britain. Like they end up getting a lot worse diseases. One thing that they didn't go into, like they focus very heavily on viral infections in this and how vaccinations have become sort of a stigmatized.
There's so much fluids going around so many people, and I think but you were just talking about idiocracy. I feel like with the amount of breeding is what I'm going to call it that's going on, which is you'd
imagine there's a lot of
by
STDs
the fact
too.
that I mean it's also kind of like a drawback to Brave New World in that people are encouraged from a very young age to record themselves.
Yeah, everyone is. Yeah, marriages are short and very public. Because I think isn't every woman is supposed to record her first time and upload it and stuff like that.
And they're giving birth and
there is a lot of like gratuitous descriptions of bodily functions in this that I didn't need to. I went through this when I was in college and had to like watch videos of surgery and stuff like that, and I don't.
That's a good example just to really tell people how quickly disease spreads in this world. Really, I think.
I think that they missed. I think they focused. One critique I have as somebody who went to school for this sort of like medical side of things is they really focused way too heavily on vaccines, and I think that again is also dating the book a little bit because there was a very strong religious push against general vaccination around the time this book was written. But the thing is, they completely glossed over one of the biggest threats that we have coming up, and that's the fact that antibiotics are currently and have been way overused in our lifetimes to the point where bacterial infections in our own world are probably going to be really difficult to deal with in a few decades. I think
they were primarily focusing on sticking it to the anti-vaxxers.
Yeah, that's why I think that it's more of like the author's own. That's me getting meta here. But if I were to make one critique of they really missed a golden opportunity to talk about the dangers of overusing antibiotics. Because then because there's multiple because there's the danger of underusing valuable medication and there's the danger of overusing medication. Both of those things can cause disasters, but they really only focused on one. Minor critique, but moving on. He's talking about his. This is one of the first times I had to stop listening to the book, is when he describes the scene of him trying to get onto the subway, and this is where you first start to realize how like perverse the society is, because everyone is like half naked, like people are walking in just like boobies hanging out,
bikinis.
They're wearing thongs, like men and women, like they're all flabby and sweaty and all pressed together, and it's described in gory detail.
Yeah.
But I will not repeat most of that here. But this is where they kind of introduce the religious part of it and how the religion kind of encourages the graphic sharing and the over-sexualization of things. And there's somebody called a confessor. And basically it's a religious person that's assigned to a community. And this religious person who, I can't remember what, he's Confessor something.
Professor Bailey.
Confessor Bailey.
Confessor Bailey, not Professor Bailey.
He's got a little monocle. But yeah, so he catches Trafford as he's going through the throng of people and, admonishes him, like, why have you not uploaded the video of your new child, of the birthing of your new child? Don't you want to share with your community? Don't you want to share in the love?
Yeah. Are you ashamed of your wife's
cooch
C word? Yeah, okay. I don't know how PC some of these words are.
That's not a swear. It's just a very crass term. And honestly, there were a lot of terms like that too. Okay, I'm gonna say this right now. This was one of the things that disturbed me the most about the way this book was written. Almost every, especially about the dialogue, almost every person in the book talks in a very juvenile and childish
Yeah.
manner,
The
but
word
also
boobies is used so many times.
but also in a very overly sexualized manner. So they talk about the kiddos and the boobies and the cooch and all this, and it's just like, oh,
Yeah.
it was disturbing to listen to on so many levels. But anyway, so he admonishes him for it, and then tells him that he promises he'll upload it, and when he asks what the kid's name is going to be, and he's of course unhappy that they decided to name her Caitlin because Caitlin is a very traditional name. They should have named him something more modern, and so he tells him, the middle name is Happy Meal, so it's Caitlin Happy Meal, and that of course is okay. That's a little bit better, but
Yeah, there's because McDonald's is quite a funny thing. I think that the author put in is like these days McDonald's is like the height of fine dining.
yeah,
It's
exactly.
like the only restaurant chain that got through the purge kind of thing.
Yeah, exactly. And there's other like restaurant chains too, and it's all like crappy fast food and junk and stuff. And they make a point that the floor is like littered with discarded food packets, and everyone is constantly eating crappy food. And this was the most horrifying part to me. Everything
Sugar.
is exactly.
Yeah,
Everything
yeah.
is sweet. Everything is sweet, and I'm like, oh.
Including the alcohol and just
Yeah, they call it like, what is it, like
Alco Pops.
Alco Pops, yeah. Which is just, I'm assuming, just alcoholic soda.
Yeah, which you have in real life.
It's something that exists.
But everything is lots of cakes. And
Yeah,
sweets.
people are eating donuts all the time.
And the priests go around in slightly more moderate wear than the average person, slightly.
Yeah,
And they also wear a lot of jewelry.
and they do. It's revealed later in the book that the Confessor Bailey has some quite interesting jewelry on his gentleman's area. Gold and jewels.
But anyway, so they get to the office.
Yeah, he gets into the office, and we're introduced to one of the next completely insufferable character, Princess Lovebud. That's her name.
I keep wanting to say bubblegum, but that's Adventure Time.
Who is
Princess Lovebud.
Yeah, she's basically the equivalent of the Barbie Heart chick from the place they live, but in the office. So
Yeah.
she's the social butterfly. She wants everyone to, be their best and live their best life and all this bullshit.
Anakin!
Do it, Anakin.
Hand me the donut, Anakin!
I didn't mean to do the Palpatine voice, but okay. And also the whole like everyone the group hugs and everything like
Rugs.
that.
Yep.
Grugs. Oh, that was the word that you
Yeah,
used.
that was a bad one.
And it's just again the description of them being like pressed into each other's sweaty folds and.
Ooh, yep, okay.
I won't go too much more into that, but yeah. So he describes his office job, and honestly, I would have a lot of fun with this office job.
Yeah.
So his job is basically data compilation, and essentially, the government is constantly collecting data, and the data that they're collecting. He described it as completely useless. Like they have a job for the sake of having a job. And it's trying to find out like, the geographical location of two people when they first, did something and then how long it took them to get married or something like that.
Yeah, measuring society in a whole bunch of crazy ways to try and find
Something.
similarities. But even then... Alright, so first of all, that job reminds me a lot of Beholder. I'm sure you remember that.
Yes, I do. I love that game.
And then actually also the society's a little bit similar as well. But no, the people with the worst job of all are the people who are literally just there to fill the quota.
I loved this thing because I've shit on this before on the podcast. It's something that I hate in like modern corporate office life. Is that there are these like quotas for people. but they're taken to a ridiculous degree in this book.
Yeah.
Like, I believe there's a guy who is hired to be old and a woman who is hired to be
disabled.
Thank you. I was about to say a much less PC term. And the thing is, he makes a point in the book that they're perfectly capable of doing the work and very intelligent, but that's not their job.
Probably better than the people that are doing the job.
But no, they're hired to prevent, ageism and ableism.
Sit in a corner.
They just sit there and be old and be disabled.
Yeah, which you gotta wonder, how old is old in this society?
That's true. I mean, presumably they just have to wait for one of the other employees, to fill the role or something. I don't know.
Yeah, I guess. But like,
they don't really ever talk
if they
about
live
how
off
old
sugar and stuff like that, and they don't have good medical care.
Then... That was something. Well, they make a very accurate point in this book, and that's that the society has very high infant mortality, but once they pass infancy, they actually do live for quite a ways. Like, and this is something that is a common misconception when people talk about the average life expectancy back in medieval times, because they say it was like 30 years. But that doesn't mean that the average person lived to 30 years old. It means that most people died as children, but then once they got past that, people could live into their 50s and 60s, no problem.
Gotcha.
Barring war and pestilence and disaster and things. So the way they describe this in the book is actually pretty accurate. Most of the people who are dying as children, but once you pass childhood, you're probably going to live into your 50s or 60s, despite the horrendous diet. You won't be very happy in your old age with all that shit food and stuff, but so that's the first. So the first day at work is really just to introduce these people. And they introduce Sandra Dee. I think she's introduced as one of the other people in the office. I don't know if
I think they're having a welcoming party for a new office member who's just out of university.
That's right. Yeah, it's a new girl, and so the Barbie, no, not Barbie, Lovebud. She is like, oh, I tuned you up. I looked at all your videos, and she's showing
someone up is like basically using YouTube.
It's Facebook stalking.
Yeah, but they even say tube you up though, so that's like
they do.
Yeah,
that's why I use the term.
YouTube. Yeah. And then go on. Anyway,
so she is showing everyone in the office the video of this new girl, losing her virginity, and it's just like treated as this. Oh, it's just it's a funny little office prank. Oh, this is so silly, and she's like, oh, I'm so embarrassed, and it's treated as that kind of an intimate thing being shown in an office environment. It's just that's fine. Yeah, no worries. And this turns into a conflict with Sandra Dee, who is described as an extremely modest woman, like by the standards of everyone. When keep in mind, modest for this society. So she's just wearing like a blouse and a short-ish skirt, and that's considered modest because everyone else is just walking around in like a thong, and that's it. And she also is described as having very moderately sized breasts. Which, again, in this society, it's expected that, if you don't have big uns, you got to go out there, you're expected to get implants. It's a social obligation.
And if you don't, some families will literally drug you and
they actually
do it.
They describe it as as a bunch of, as guys, like the men in the family, like the uncles and brothers and stuff, will drug the girl and bring her to get the operation done, which is disturbingly reminiscent of in a lot of Central Asian countries. I can't remember what country this is. I don't want to say a lot of them. There's one in particular that in a very rural region where there's a tradition where if a guy wants to marry a woman, she's maybe not interested, all that guy's male relatives will kidnap the woman and then bring her to the female relatives, and they'll basically harass her into marrying the guy. Which is, it's not the same, it's different. It's boob job versus that, but...
Yeah, I mean, it's almost worse, I would say.
It is worse.
Yeah.
Wait, the
Well,
boobs.
but
or
I mean,
the...
at least the person's not having surgery done. I mean,
Yeah, it depends on
let's not get because FGM and is all where this is going to go.
Yeah, that's true. But it's disturbing regardless.
Yes. I will say, if you stuck it through this far, it does get less shocking as we go through. We are in like the first 2 scenes of the book, if that.
Yeah, and there's a reason I'm kind of front-loading all of this early on, like a lot of the disturbing stuff, because that's the way the book is structured, really, is like all of the most fucked up things, like a lot of the world building about how messed up this world is, happens in those first few chapters.
Yeah.
Yeah, so the conflict happens between Sandra Dee and Lovebud, and basically Lovebud is like mocking her for not having, boobs, and she basically just comes back and is like, yeah, I don't care, I don't need them, and the conflict kind of escalates a little bit, and Trafford, he sees an opportunity to kind of defend her without defending her, but basically to derail the whole conversation. And
then Cassius steps in.
Cassius is the old guy.
Cassius.
What's the back to the Red Rising references? I want to reread those books. That was really good. Anyway,
so Cassius takes Trafford out for lunch.
That's right, to a falafel shop.
A falafel shop, yes.
Falafel. Yeah, I can never pronounce that.
Well, but not one of the mainstream falafel shops where they put lots of sugar in their falafel, which sounds really weird, because I don't know if you've had falafel. I'm sure you have.
Yeah.
Mediterranean. It's not sweet.
No,
it's just
it's a savory dish.
Yeah.
Yes,
like
and he takes
him.
Yeah, not to one of these chain restaurants, but to like a small mom and pop place, which it's described as, we can't be seen here. This is weird. We'll be seen as unorthodox, and but they go in, they have it, and they have a little bit of a conversation. And in this conversation, it's revealed that Cassius is part of basically a secret society where he's clandestinely like vaccinating children if he can to save them from all these different diseases that go around. And then he also has an interest in these like this banned literature and stuff like that. And basically he's taken him aside because he knows that Trafford has a newborn baby and he's worried about the baby. He's like, I could give it the right shots to make sure that it doesn't die of whatever disease. And of course Trafford
doesn't believe.
He doesn't believe it, and he's terrified by this. He's basically saying, like, what are you talking about? We aren't having this conversation. Like, he thinks Cassius is a cop or something like that. It's somebody who's going to narc on him. But he eventually, like, realizes the wisdom of what Cassius is saying, that, if you act suspicious, that's when people are going to pay attention to you. No one watches all of this crap, like, on all these different screens. And what?
No, sorry.
So Trafford agrees to at least think about it and go home, and he's going to talk to his wife about it and everything. So he goes back home. His wife is... She's like... If you've ever seen, like...
Tinkerbell is the next part.
Tinkerbell?
Yeah.
Which...
Tinks, the person in the apartments who's the really popular girl.
Oh, yeah, because she's talking about how, like, she lost her kid or something like that. And
no, she's getting married.
She's getting married, but hasn't she also lost a child? So, like, that comes up in the conversation. Anyway, yeah she's getting married, and she's gossiping and talking about this and stuff all over the live stream, and Trafford's wife is desperately trying to be part of the conversation. It has a very, like, Mean Girls kind of, like, high school drama kind of feel to it, where there's, like, it's the hens are picking her to death.
Which I can totally see that being a kind of horror. the kind of mass mob of people that you're trying to be friends with, and they just
this is actually something that again, it's one of the places this book is remarkably prescient, because it's something that has since been studied a lot more by psychologists since the time this book was written, and they found that like the people who have the most negative mental health effects from using a lot of social media is young women or teenage girls, because there is a tendency, like when you compare men and women in broad averages, women do tend to be much more social, like on average, and
I don't know, maybe care more about
social standing, and there's
I'm not sorry.
There's evolutionary reasons for it, but finish your thought.
I was gonna say the evidence I have for this, which is that when you hear these stories about people like on the news, they come on the news 2 days running wearing the same dress or something, they get heckled like shit. But it doesn't happen for the men and stuff like that. Just your everyday appearance is
there is a funny thing where they did a look into this, and women do receive a ton of harassment online, and it almost always comes from other women. And so there are evolutionary reasons and social. And again, I'm talking in broad averages here, but they have found, and part of the reason for this is like humans evolved to be in like small tribal communities, like tracking your social standing in a group of say like 100 to 500 people, and beyond that it becomes more difficult. Now you've got social media things where your brain is tracking the fact that I'm now part of a community of like 10,000 people or like 1 million people or something like that. And suddenly you get bombarded with like, you know, maybe only like 100 or 200 people say are jumping on you and saying, oh, that's don't agree with that. I hate you for this. Your brain
too busy making Lalafels in Final Fantasy to pay any attention.
It's like, do you remember the meme, the this is the male fantasy meme? It's the one where there's like some feminist blogger who's like, this is why I hate video games. You know, this just appeals to the male fantasy.
The other day, didn't you?
Well, there's like 1 million of them. So basically, they cut out what she originally had there and just had guys doing something stupid in a video game, and it's just it's hilarious. Anyway, I'm getting way off track here, but basically, Trafford is kind of disheartened by the way this has happened to his wife, like, because she apparently used to be a much more like independent person. She used to be like a lot more confident and assured of herself, but since they've become part of this community and she's quite low on the pecking order, she's become much more desperate to fit in and to get some social clout. You look like you want to say something.
I was gonna say, did you remember the bit where he snaps?
Oh, that's why I brought up her kid, the Tinkerbell's kid, because she's like hogging the limelight, and she's just like, "Oh, I know my baby's up in heaven, and he's sending words to my psychic, and the psychic." Yeah,
the psychic is like...
and Trafford's like, "Oh, did he learn to read and speak up there, or something like that?"
Yeah, in heaven.
Just a moment of sarcasm that he just couldn't hold because he was getting so pissed at these people shitting on his wife, which perfectly natural reaction to have, you know. Good on you, Trafford. Defend your woman. What? Yeah, well, yeah, it's a little bit of that too. But to be fair, the woman was using her dead child to try and gain social clout, which again, was kind of bad.
Neither of us believe in psychics, frankly. In real life, if you go to a psychic and that person helps your mental aptitude, then
some people like they're looking for comfort, and if that brings you comfort, more power to you. Anyway, so that
he turns it around.
Yeah, he has to very quickly like cover himself by like, oh, is this? I just meant that it's wonderful that a child can communicate so purely and so completely through the psychic or something like that. And barely manages to save himself from getting like blogged up about how shitty a person he is.
Haven't explained blogged up yet.
So, well, I mean, it's kind of self-evident. Basically, if somebody doesn't like you and that person is popular and they have a bunch of following, they can basically just type up how shitty you are, and it fucks up your life.
I love how they replaced the word fuck with blog. In that they say, I'm going to blog you up. Literally, that's just what they do. It's
because
funny.
In this world, like, the social media clout has a lot more... There's a lot of elements of this where they've essentially grafted... kind of the evangelical and social media culture from the US onto the UK in a lot of ways. Because this takes place in the UK, but a lot of the ways that people act is kind of this weird American-British hybrid. Because, I don't know, and maybe this is just me projecting or thinking about this, because just like... And again, it's a dystopian future. I'm just thinking, like, if somebody wrote something else about me like that, I'm just going to go fucking kick down their door. It's like, what the fuck are you talking about? Step outside.
I was sat having a meal with some people the other day, and they made some remarks about Americans, which I am not going to repeat. And I was just sat there like... I think you're all full... I didn't say it, but I think you're all full of shit.
That's fine. I mean, every culture, every country has like their one thing that there's a lot of Britishness about Trafford that really gets under my skin. He's such a remarkable pussy in so many ways. Like he's very, very introverted in a lot of ways. He doesn't like just but come out and do something.
And I'd say he's quite the opposite. In a society like that, where you can be literally beaten to death for accidentally stepping on a card that was left for a deceased child,
that is true.
A horde of angry mothers, I think him saying a sarky remark about a dead child is paramount to suicidal braveness.
He did grow on me. He did grow on me in the early stages. That was my feeling, and he did slowly grow on me as he became a little bit more assertive and a little bit more confident in his beliefs and stuff near the end of the book. Anyway, so that all happens. He broaches the subject of vaccination with his wife. She reacts very emotionally and does not want to like hear it, and she's constantly like paranoid that somebody might hear or something like that, and she doesn't want it done. She, you know, even though he's swaying her, but she's just kind of become so beaten down by this community that she's in, she just doesn't want to take the risk or anything like that.
Yeah.
He decides he's gonna fuck it. He's gonna do it anyway. He does because he's lost. It's established he's lost a child in the past.
What job does she do?
What?
Does she have a job?
I don't know. I don't know what she does.
Because if she doesn't have a job, I can... How fucking bad would it be if you couldn't even... You know... Even going to a shitty workplace like
you
that,
can't even escape. Yeah, you're stuck there, constantly surrounded by the screens in this horrible community, which you're at like the lowest rung of. Anyway, so Trafford decides he's gonna take care of this. He's gonna have it done. So he contacts Cassius again. They make arrangements to go and have this done.
Yeah.
And
I think they do it in a theater.
They do. They go out to a theater and they basically just have the baby there, and you know, just clandestinely sticks it with the needle and gives it the vaccination, and then they go off, and there's a bunch of what happens over the next couple chapters, and I'm going to gloss over them very quickly, and then. Yeah, a bunch of what happens over the next chapters, it's mostly dialogue, and it's mostly them just kind of, like, it's more world building. It's more listening to the shitty opinions of Barbie Hart and What's-Her-Face.
I would like to go into the trial, because the trial was fucking funny.
We can talk about that, yep. But that's That's
that not next?
That's when they go to see the they talk about confession for the first time.
Right.
And I will get to that, but it takes a bit to get to that because the confession that's where they're going for the divorce.
Yes, that was you're right. Sorry.
So there's a couple things that have to happen first, but we'll get to that. And actually, we've been going for a little bit. Should just pause here for a sec, and then we'll pick up in like 2 seconds. Be right back. All right. So, where was I? They just got vaccinated. He goes back, and like I was saying, a lot of the chapters at this point, there's a lot of dialogue. And again, it's more world building, establishing how shitty the people are, establishing some of the other social norms that are meant to be like disturbing from today's standpoint. And one of the things that happens is that so Trafford becomes more and more interested in this Sandra Dee character that we mentioned earlier, mostly because of how she kind of has this quiet, calm defiance of the office bully.
Yeah, she doesn't want to pay into the cupcake fund.
Yeah, the donut fund or whatever it is.
Which I am fully behind that. I'm sure you are as well.
Yeah. So this interest kind of develops in him going, and he goes and stalks her on social media, looks at her YouTube page, looks at her Facebook page, her blog, and everything. Basically, they're expected, or I don't know if they're legally required or if they're just expected to do a blog post every day.
Well, I think their confessor probably expects them to, and if they don't, then they're going against the love and the Lord. So
yeah,
I think it is technically like a legal thing.
That's the other thing. They talk about other. There's basically other gods. So it's the religion that the temple preaches is roughly based on Christianity, but they've added new deities to the pantheon because they've now got Diana, whoever the fuck that is. And they're like everything is like, we confess to the Lord and the love. I loved the way that the reader did all the preachers in this. Like his like bombastic like, preacher voice was you
can see like Elvis as a priest.
That's
kind of
that was
kind of the vision
that was the feel. Just,
like they're about to burst into song.
Well, that's one of the things one of them says, like, let me hear you say yeah! Yes. Let me hear you say yeah! Excuse me. It was so good. Oh.
They're just like, yeah.
There were definitely, I know I kind of shit on the audiobook version earlier, but again, it was a testament to the quality, how creeped out I felt by some of the dialogue. But some of the ways that he read the preacher voice prices were just priceless. Anyway, so he goes and he stalks her online, and he discovers that she doesn't post shit. Like, her blog is basically just copy-pasted segments from other people's blogs. Her videos are all people who have really crappy cameras, and they're just kind of rough angles that sort of look like her, but aren't really her. So she's never posted anything online. And his wife catches him doing this. Just like, oh, who the fuck is this? And he turns around and she's wearing like a chocolate thong or something like that. Cause she's...
Well, they've been arguing for a very long time. And then it comes across a phrase which is kind of interesting. Linging someone up.
Yeah, linging, and again, being a shortening of lingerie. Yeah. And the idea being that, she's, and it's, of course, it's chocolate. And, she's wearing
which she bought from a shop which has just the greatest name, which needs to be a real thing.
What is it?
The shop was, I think it was Dirty, Sexy, Naughty Bitch.
Yeah, that's what it was.
The name of the shop.
I couldn't remember if it was naughty or slutty, but yeah, it was that was what it was called. Also, the way that the person reading this audiobook has like a very posh British accent for his narration. Like, he does a lot of other voices really well, but to hear him go, he bought the thong clearly from Dirty, Sexy, Naughty Bitch. It sounded so weird in that accent.
Yeah. I listened to Ian McKellen talk dirty.
Oh. Oh God. Anyway, so Trafford's like not happy about this, but of course Barbie Hart has seen this on the live stream, and so
everyone's seeing this, yeah.
and
The
because of
whole
that,
block.
he basically is just like it takes all the wind out of his sails. He's floppy as hell, but he
He's got
needs
to sort her out.
yeah, they need they have a social obligation now to sort her out, as they say.
That's their word, not ours.
Yeah, and so they dry hump for a while for the cameras and then go to bed. Yeah. Anyway, and the other plot that's been developing at this point is the fact that Cassius, he's become more and more involved with Cassius now about the whole. So this is something that, and I'll save this for our discussion at the end because this is a plot point. Cassius makes the point that he would, medicate all the children if he could, with or without their parents' permission, and I know we had a brief discussion about this. I want to talk about it on the podcast. But he becomes more involved with Cassius in that he finds out that he's part of like a humanist society. Humanists being just basically a fancy way to call yourself an atheist, for the most part. Not atheist, more like agnostic. They're people who are...
Put humans first, really. I mean, is the most basic way of...
Yeah. And the way that they do it, like he this is part of the second part of that quote I read earlier that I had written down, that science has become a religion, to basically the humanists that Cassius is involved with, and as he describes his own worldview and philosophy, it becomes very clear that he's one of these people to whom science itself, the concept of reason, has become a sort of religious creed, which, in my personal opinion, is almost as dangerous as radical religion. Like, science is not something you believe. Science is a method. That's like saying, I believe in meters. It's like, that's not... You don't believe in meters. Meters are a way to measure distance. Science isn't something you believe in. Science is a method for you to try and understand the world. Anyway, sorry, just... one of my own little rants, because I hate... one of my most hated modern phrases is believe the science. It's like, no. If you just believe the science, you are a bad scientist. Stop. It's one of the reasons I specifically hate it when people call me a scientist. I'm an engineer. It means I actually do work.
Wow. Ouch to all those scientists.
Sorry, I think that's a little bit too far. Anyway. Oh, excuse me. Sorry, I have a bit of a cough. Allergies. So anyway,
there's scientists out there right now are like, yes, it's working.
I've been infected. So he goes and he meets with a few more, he gets past a few key books. They splooge about Darwin and how he's like the key to everything, and which is, again, it dates the book, because the big debate in the US, at least at the time, was the whole, for some reason, Darwinian evolution was still something that was being questioned and debated. And it's one of those theories that, like any other scientific theory, it's the best estimate we have now until we get more evidence. That's one of the reasons that believing science is a bad idea, because there's always the chance that new evidence comes to light.
It's kind of one of religion's greatest historical enemies, as it were.
Yeah. And again, this is one of those weird things where it really is a historical enemy only when you're talking about the evangelicals. Because specifically, and this is the monastic tradition, specifically the Protestant monastic tradition in Europe and in the UK in particular, like most scientific developments that came out of the Middle Ages, they came out of monasteries. They came out of monks. It's a very peculiar thing. Almost every religion in the world went down a route in the Middle Ages of assuming that because God can change everything, there's no point in studying things because God could just change it. Except for Protestant Christianity. They went down the route of well, God created everything, so if we study everything and learn about it, then we'll become closer to God. And that was one of the reasons that science flourished in Europe, where it actually kind of fell off in a lot of the rest of the world.
And because we kept having wars.
Yeah, well, I mean, too. I mean, come on. You need to learn how to design a better ballista.
Yeah.
Anyway, yeah, it's just a little historical anecdote. Yeah, so he starts getting more and more books, and he gets more and more involved in the movement. He's like, I want more of a revolution. I want to like get more people involved. You guys are moving too slow. He's very, very passionate about this, because it's established throughout the book that Trafford is a bit of a rebel. He's somebody who wants to, he wants to act out. He wants privacy. And early on, they talk about how, like, privacy is what, why do you want to be private? Are you a pervert? Like, are you doing things you don't want people to know about behind closed doors?
Yeah. It's that old, like, someone asks you something really private and you're like, I'm not going to tell you about that, and then they immediately come back with, oh, so you didn't say no, so you must be doing it, so you are guilty.
Oh, you have something to hide?
Yeah.
Yeah, which, it's a very human emotion to just want privacy. Anyway, so that goes on, he's starting to get involved with this, and here's where one of the big hooks hit. First of all, the rift between him and his wife gets worse and worse, and eventually they go for a divorce. And one of the reasons it's established in this society that it's one of the many contradictions that Trafford points to is the fact that marriage is celebrated. Every marriage is treated like it's going to be eternal and the only one. But there's a social expectation that the man will only stay for a short amount of time, then they divorce, and he moves on, but the child stays with the woman. Which, again, horrible setup for all involved, in my opinion.
Yeah.
So they go for divorce. But to get a divorce, what they do is they go to the community confession, which Confessor Bailey, he's up on the stage, and they have trials and stuff like that, but then they have a divorce, and they're expected to bear it all out, why they're not having, why their marriage isn't successful, why they need a divorce, and then they sign off on it. The community endorses it, and so on and so on.
Yeah.
The trial, which I know, I could see the look on your face. What is it? One of my favorite, because they have other things going on. One of the things that goes up before them, is this woman who is mad because her husband slept with her sister and her mother, and she caught them. And the husband's defense is, well, you weren't giving me what I needed. And then so's the wife and mother.
Yeah.
Sorry, did you have something to say about it?
Well, yeah. First of all, the accents are just brilliant. He really gets the essence of Chavi, kind of just a chav. Just
you want to sort me out?
And it's like it's very Jerry Springer.
Yes.
Like the guy in defense is like, yeah, she's frigid, she won't let me do butt stuff, and the crowd's like, oh, how dare she?
And the one of my favorite things is a line from the sister, because she's like, he was going to leave us and stuff like that because, she wasn't giving him what he needed, so I did it to keep the family together. Yeah. It's such a fucked up excuse, but it was accepted, and so, like, the resolution was, wife and husband, they bang right there on the stage.
Right, in court, yeah.
It's like, oh, see, we're going to... I think she actually just, like, rips off her bra. It's like, all right, here we go. Yeah, I'm going to save this marriage right now. And anyway, so but that's what it is. It's it's very Jerry Springer-esque. It's very, not...
I wish they'd done some kind of DNA test joke. That would have been so good.
That would have been funny, too. Anyway, so Trafford and his wife go up there, and they give the reason for them breaking up is, and it's all very, very silly, like, again, with the childish language. It's like, he doesn't sort me out. I don't feel like the real me or something like that.
I can't remember the reasons after the previous court case. I was just...
I mean, no, that the one with the mom, that was just so I actually laughed out loud because I remember what I was doing at the time. I was cooking dinner while I was listening to this, and I heard that, and I just busted out laughing listening to it. Anyway, yeah, so they go up there, and here's where the twist happens. It turns out that one of the reasons, that the audience isn't quite satisfied. They think that these people are boring, and the confessor presses them on, like, oh, what's the real reason? And that's when his wife, Shantoria, pulls out I catch him, like, perving on one girl online, Sandra
not a whole
D.
bunch of girls, which is all right.
Yeah.
But one girl is weird.
One girl in particular.
Yeah.
And then he sees that she's in the audience, the Sandra D, the girl, and she is furious staring at him. Because he's like, oh God, she is put in all this effort to be private and to not be noticed, and I've just shined a spotlight on her.
Yeah.
So that's that. Their divorce, however, gets put on hold. It all goes through, and it's going to happen, but it gets put on hold because an epidemic moves through their community building. They call it, and again, the childish names for, like, the diseases. It's like, it's not measles, it's measles plus. It's, whatever, cholera plus, or something like that.
It's measles and mumps, and then later is that. Yeah,
and later is cholera. So the first two go through, and Trafford and his wife become very popular now because their child had been, inoculated against... One. Yeah. It's the only child that survives both plagues. Because they had been inoculated against both. Which, he only gave her the one shot, which confused me. Like, how did that work? Like, did he have...
He did say it was... It was a measles and mumps vaccine or something. Okay. Like, it did more than one thing. Personally, I'm not I don't know much about vaccines, but I'm assuming they could do 2 in 1, maybe?
It depends on how they're actually made, because there's... Working in the pharmaceutical industry, there's a ton of red tape you have to go through with any minor change you make to something. So if it makes sense for something that's been around as long as those vaccines for them to have maybe made a hybrid one. I don't know for certain. But it did. I didn't realize it was a shot for both of them. I thought he just gave her the one. So I'm like, how did she survive both diseases? Anyway, doesn't matter. She lives, and now she's the miracle child. She's the angel come down from heaven. His wife has had a religious revival because like her baby is the one that lived. She's the miracle child who lived for all the other babies that died, which they continue to call kiddos, which still...
Yeah.
Anyway.
Well, yeah.
Sorry.
No, nothing. So she's seen as kind of the real... Well, not the real, I suppose, but the human incarnation of Mary kind of thing.
Yeah, who they call Diana. Diana and the Love. Anyway, yeah, so they enjoy some fame. They're locked down in the building for like 30 days while they wait for the plague to kind of make its way through. And again, it kills every other kid under the age of 2 in the building.
Yep.
And... his wife, Shantoria, becomes more and more obsessed with this, and Trafford uses this newfound social clout to basically go unnoticed, because he's reading all these books, but he's reading them in, like, book sleeves for, like, crappy self-help books. And so he's like, oh, yeah, I'm just trying to be self-improve now and be a better person and whatnot.
Books like How to Get Money and Be Famous.
Yeah. I think
we could talk about I think we might have slightly gone past, but it doesn't really matter, the first concert.
Oh, that's right. Yeah, him and his wife go to a concert. And they're all supposed to be the next and biggest and best concert ever. And
you get lottery tickets to go to concerts in this world.
And it's basically like a concert mixed with like a religious revival. So the
a religious concert, really.
The bishop, whose name is it's like something like Solomon, Kentucky. That's his name. Solomon, Kentucky is his name. which is a fucking awesome name for a preacher.
No, ignore me. I keep thinking of Colonel Sanders, because Sanders, Solomon, and Kentucky.
But he's the one who's just like, he also brings out the preacher voice. He's like, let me hear you say love. Let me hear you say everlasting love.
You're very good at that accent.
Let me hear you say have love.
Yeah.
It's such a good voice. Oh. Anyway, yeah, so they have their, night out at this whole religious revival. They have some funny things, like their social obligations again, like the woman is expected to get on the shoulders of the guy, but not all the guys are strong enough to, because their diet of sugar and their morbidly obese friends are not necessarily able to get on the shoulders. So people have ladders.
Yeah.
Where the woman sits on the ladder and the guy stands under the ladder. I just found that I found that hilarious.
Yeah. And then there's the one preacher guy that came in.
Which,
There's one guy who came in and said, you're all stupid and...
Oh, yeah. There's a guy who comes in who's basically like an actual Christian who's like, all of this is corrupt, all of you people are stupid, this isn't the way of, this isn't the right way, you need to do this and do that. And he nearly gets beaten to death by the audience, who are all whipped up into a fury.
And they're all declared to be famous.
Oh, yeah. That's the other thing. I didn't talk about this. Wembley laws, they call them.
Laws.
And so basically the only way a new law happens is they have one of these religious concerts with a bunch of people there. They whip them up into a fervor, and then they ask them a question or something like that. And then they can create a new law if everyone just goes, yeah. And so the new law is that everyone is famous. Yay.
Yep.
And this is actually where you get the donut scene that you were talking about. The next day when they're celebrating becoming all famous, and that's when the confrontation over the donut thing happens. And this is where Trafford uses his new social clout to kind of defend Sandra Dee from Princess Lovebud. And this is where he starts to actually try to get in contact with Sandra Dee. Yeah. Like, she's still pissed at him for calling attention to her during the whole rally thing. But after some concerted effort, he does pique her interest. I can't remember.
She takes him out.
Yeah, she takes him out because she owns a boat.
Yeah.
And so they go out, like, and just... she has a little boat. They go out, and he's just flabbergasted by the idea that, they're alone. I haven't been this far away from people in ever.
Boats are incredibly expensive in this world, as they are in real life.
Yeah. And it's established that it's not like a huge boat either. It's basically big enough for like a few people, and that's it.
Yeah. But it's still like the cost of a house kind of thing.
Yeah. And they have a little bit of a kinky moment where... I
thought this part was really interesting.
I really enjoyed this part, actually.
Yeah.
I thought this was very well done because it's so different. I think the reason this scene is so effective is the rest of the book has been so like crass and overly sexualized and kind of a bit gross. You get to this point and they're calm, they're alone, they're out on the water, and they have a very intimate moment that is sexual but not physical.
Yeah, no physicality.
So basically, they have a little bit of a mild flirtatious moment, and she asks. Trafford basically says that he's had fantasies about her, and she gets him to describe one to her, and he basically talks her through like his fantasy. And they're not touching, they're not doing anything. They're both fully dressed. And
I think that's why, because obviously I'd read this book first, and then I read 1984, yeah. When it got to the sex scene in that, I was very disappointed, because it wasn't nearly as good as this, honestly.
It is very well described. Like, this author has a talent, I think, for strong visualization in terms of his
Yeah.
writing, both for the disgusting things and